Hey, everybody, it's Tommy Canale, and welcome back to Before the Lights podcast. This show that tells you how they made their mark. He's a legendary musician and drummer, co-founder, and only continuous member of the supergroup Bad Company. He's the governor on a board of a Grammy Award committee and was born in Lambeth, South London. He has guested on a long list of recordings by artists such as Wilson Pickett, Government Mule, and countless others. Let's welcome in Simon Kirke. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tommy. It's very nice to be here.
Yes, I'm excited. You grew up in the countryside of Wales. And before we get into your music career, who was Simon as a kid? What did you enjoy doing?
Well, I was a transplanted city guy. You know, when I was about 7 or 8, we moved from London. Me and my parents and my 2 brothers, we moved up to the border of Wales. It's a very, very rural part of the United Kingdom. And, I did what any 8 to 9, 10-year-old kid did. You know, I enjoyed life. And looking back on it, even though we didn't have electricity or running water, we lived a very Spartan existence. Me and my younger brother, particularly my younger brother, we had a lot of fun out there, even though we were kind of foreigners in a way because we were from the city and we had weird names like Simon and Miles, where, most people were called John or Bob, or Tommy, but all in all, we had a pretty good time, but it wasn't for me. I didn't want to end my days in that part of the world. I had other aspirations.
Sure. The Beatles influenced you to start drumming, and you landed a gig with a local band called the Manicas, and you did drums and vocals. How rare was it for somebody to be the vocalist who's also the drummer in those days? Because it's actually still rare today.
Well, the timeline is slightly different. I joined a band called the Maniacs, still one of the best names of any band I've ever been involved in. They were a bunch of country bumpkins, and we played covers. And the great thing about that band was it had one amp. And even though it was 2 guitarists, a bass and drums, and a singer, and this amp had 11 inputs. And everyone went through this. So I didn't actually sing.
Okay.
No, I formed a band called Heatwave a couple of years after the Maniacs. I left the Maniacs, and then I did the singing, and it was pretty rare. And I took a leaf out of Ringo Starr's book because Ringo, at the time, the Beatles gave him, I believe, on most albums, they gave him a song to sing. And, not a great voice, but it wasn't a terrible voice either. And then I saw them live on TV in London at the Royal Variety Performance. And Ringo was singing live. And I'm going, wow, I've never seen that before, to play drums and sing. So I gotta thank him for that. And it gave me confidence to sing and play drums in the Heatwave. And that's where I started my singing career, which came to a halt when Paul Rodgers entered the scene because he's a pretty good singer.
Yes. You left school at 17 after a deal with your parents. You were given 2 years to make it as a drummer or go back to college. So you go to London to be in the blues scene. And after 23 months of no luck after jobs in construction and demolition and car washing, you went back to the country and met Paul Kossoff, who was with the band Black Cat Bones, and landed a job. So how did it go from 23 months to all of a sudden it clicks and you find this job?
Well, it all came down to the toss of a coin.
Really?
I swear to God, I couldn't make this up. Well, I could, and it would still sound interesting. But this is real life. And I actually didn't go back to the country. You said in your monologue just then, I stayed in London, and the clock was ticking. I mean, you're right. I was given 24 months. And on the 23rd month, I saw an advert in one of the music papers in London. And I loved the name. I thought, what a great name for a band, Black Cat Bones. And I didn't know anything about them other than they were a blues band. And I went across London on the subway to see them. And when I walked in, it was in this pub called the Nag's Head. And they were on this little stage, little 5-piece band. The band were okay. They were nothing special, but the guitarist was incredible. He had such passion. He was only a little bloke. He was only about 5'4". But he really commanded the stage. And this was Paul Kossoff. And during a break, he came down to the bar, and I offered to buy him a little half pint of beer. And I said, I think you're amazing, man. You're really, but I don't think your drummer's very good. And he said, well, it's funny you should say that, because tonight is his last night, and we're having auditions tomorrow in this same place in the Nag's Head. We got another guy coming along. If you want to come along and have a go. And I did. I came back the next day and I played a couple of blues songs with them, and they liked what they heard, and they offered me the job.
How long were you with them, Simon, before you guys all left and formed Free?
About 6 or 7 months, Tommy. Paul took me aside. We became very friendly. We were fast friends. He kind of took me under his wing, even though I was older than him. But we became friends very quickly. And he took me aside one day, said, listen, I'm kind of tired of playing the same old blues standards, but I met this guy who was in another band across town in a band called Brown Sugar, and his name's Paul Rodgers, and he wants to form a band with me. And, would you like to come and play drums? So I was kind of, I've just landed this job where I'm earning money in a band, and pretty good money, and now you want to sabotage it. I didn't say this because I really liked Paul and I really loved his playing. So I kind of let the wind take me, if you will. And we went across town to meet Paul Rodgers, and we jammed with him, and he was just out of this world. So you got this incredible singer, this incredible guitar player, and I just felt pretty good about ditching this band and joining forces with the two Pauls. And then we got Andy Fraser through a mutual friend, and he was only 15, Tommy. I mean, this kid wasn't even shaving.
Wow.
Yeah. And he'd been playing with John Mayall, which, of course, John Mayall was like the godfather of the blues back in the British blues scene in the late 60s. And we got together in the Nag's Head, this same pub, which sadly has been demolished, but it should have it should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Because when we had our first rehearsal, we just clicked, the four of us clicked immediately. And it was during that first rehearsal that this guy, Alexis Corner, who was another, godfather of the blues, and he popped his head in, and he was stunned by what he'd heard. He said, you guys sound like you've been playing together years. Now, what are you going to call yourself? And we had no idea. We really had no idea. And we sat down and had a little ciggy and a drink. And he said, well, look, I had a band called Free at Last with Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker. I beg your pardon, Graham Bond, organist, and Jack Bruce. And it was called Free at Last. And I thought, wow, that's a good name. But obviously we can't have a name that's already been taken. And he said, well, why don't you call it Free? Boom. So we did.
The mega hit All Right Now, which has been #1 in several countries, surpassed well over 2 million radio plays. Simon, what did you think when you guys first put this song together and you listened back to it? Did you think you had a mega hit on your hands?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Tommy. We did various takes of that song in Island Records in London. I think we did about 26 takes, not complete. There'd be breakdowns or there'd be, whatever. But it was such a joy to play. And normally when Free recorded, we only did 2 or 3 takes at best. Obviously, we rehearsed songs before we went into the studio because it was expensive. So we had the songs prepared. But the thing about All Right Now was it was such a joy to play. And when we got back into the control room to listen back to the first complete take, we were rocking. We thought, wow, yeah, this was special.
Mhm.
This was special, and it was.
What was the success like for you? Because you were like 19 years old going across multiple countries, and you guys were going all over. You played the 1907 Isle of Wight Festival. You guys were everywhere. What was that like at such a young age?
Well, we didn't feel young. Yes, we were on paper. We were very young. I was 21 in 1970. Paul Rodgers a few months behind me. Koss was born in 1950, so he was a year younger. Andy, I believe, 52. So, yeah, we were young, but we didn't really feel that young. We were just full of energy and brimming with enthusiasm and ambition. But the Isle of Wight was something else. I mean, I'd never, and still to this day, I've never played in front of a crowd that big. By the way, without monitors. No bands used monitors back in those days. There were no wedges on the front of the stage. Can you believe that now?
No.
You go to clubs that are the size of a phone booth, and you'll see 2 or 3 monitors on the wedges. No, there were no monitors. So that aside, when we got to the Isle of Wight, it was we were shit scared. I'll be honest. We'd never seen anything like it, But we've held our own and got us a lot of publicity. We were on the front of the Sunday magazine, the big Daily Telegraph. So it really launched us. That whole All Right Now, conundrum, if you will, that launched us big time.
How do you follow up a song like All Right Now? I mean, you can't surpass that. So, I mean, the expectations have to be ridiculous, but it's pretty much unrealistic. Fire and Water is an excellent song by Free, but I don't think it got enough attention because of All Right Now.
Well, the thing about All Right Now, Tommy, is it came out of a bad gig. And we didn't really have an up-tempo song per se that people could dance to or get up and, we were like a moody sort of grooving, head nodding, bit stone, but, a lot of passion, a lot of feel. And we died a death. One night we died a death and we got back in the dressing room and I believe Andy said, we need something to, a little bit more up-tempo. So All Right Now came out. It was this monstrous hit. So that need for a song like that was filled. And to follow that up, we were of the opinion we were not going to like defer to popular trends and start writing hits. No, we were a blues rock band. All Right Now was kind of a pop thing, a little bit of an anomaly for what we were normally used to. But the Island Records, our record company, were hot for us to follow that up. We released The Stealer on the album Highway, which followed All Right Now and Fire and Water, and it didn't do a thing. I mean, Stealer was a great song and a great piece of music. I loved it to this day, but it didn't chart. And Highway didn't chart. The album behind it didn't chart. So we reached this peak with All Right Now, and then suddenly it wasn't a gradual descent. It was like a plummet. We were brought back to earth very quickly.
You guys had struggles with the band. I know Paul Kossoff had a drug problem, and in that era, Simon, drugs were looked at much different than they are today. In today's world, people want to get help and they want to reach out and help somebody. But back then it was kind of like taboo if you had a drug problem and you were looked at as lesser evil than somebody else. How much was this affecting the inner works of the band?
Oh, huge. And that's very good. I'm glad you brought that up. The general overview of drug problems now carries so much less of a stigma than it did 50 years ago. I mean, if you were a drug addict or alcoholic, and I know because I've been in the program quite a long time myself, but back in those days, you were a pariah. No one wanted to know you. You shot dope, my God. You snort. Coke didn't come into the UK until the early to mid 70s. But so we're talking mainly about downers, what you would call quaaludes, and a lot of drink. And Koss got really strung out on these downers, and eventually started doing heroin and became a real mess. And it impacted Free tremendously. And because of our ignorance and the ignorance of the management, instead of putting this poor lad into rehab for at least 3 months, we would cancel a tour and have his girlfriend look after him for a couple of weeks, and then hope that everything would work out. And we broke up and then reformed to help him, and it was honorable, but it was all for the wrong reasons. But nowadays, people say, "Hey, I'm Simon, or I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a drug addict." It's not a big deal. And in fact, it's a mark of honor that you admit and you are seeking help and you're in recovery. So it's changed big time.
Agree with you. It has. I mean, it's a totally different world today than it was, not just in the 60s and 70s, but even in the 80s. It's a completely different world. This world is changing rapidly every year, it seems like. When Free disbanded, which led to Bad Company with Paul and Mick Ralphs and Boz Burrell, what was it about Paul that made you decide to go join this group?
Well, I've always, I love Paul, and I've admired him, and I've admired his singing since day one. And he was always, he's kind of hard to work with, especially back in the day when we were all drinking and all a little on edge with each other. But it was a productive edge, if you will. So when Paul he went his own way, we all went our own ways. I always hoped that I could work with Paul again, because number one, he was a great singer. He wrote very good songs. He had a very good work ethic. He was very honest. Everything about him was an attractive. He had an attractive aura around him. So when he called me up, or I called him after 6 or 7 months, he said, "Well, I'm working with Mick Ralphs." He was in this band called Peace, Paul, and they supported Mott the Hoople on their English tour. And Paul and Mick Ralphs sort of struck up this friendship, and Mick was unhappy with Mott. He said, "Look, I want to leave." And they said, "Well, let's form a band together." So when I called Paul, he said, "Look, I'm teaming up with Mick. You want to come down and maybe play drums?" I said, "I'd love to." And that's exactly what I did. And we played as a trio with various bass players. We were looking for bass players. It took about 9 months to find Boz. But when Boz came in, that was the final fitting of the final piece. And then we called Peter Grant, Led Zeppelin.
How did you guys come up with the name?
Well, that's always been in the last 20 or so years. There's two stories, and the one that I always remember is that there was a Western called Bad Company with Jeff Bridges, and it was released, I believe, in late or mid 1973, and it was playing in our local movie house in Guildford, which was near where Paul's little cottage was, where we were rehearsing. And I remember him coming back, Paul Rodgers coming back from doing grocery shopping or some errands that he was running. And he said, "I've just seen this great name on a billboard. It's called Bad Company." And I went, wow. Straight away, I'm like, yeah, great. Now, he will say a little later, quite a few years later, he was reading a book, a Victorian book about Victorian, the Jack the Ripper era. And there was this big picture of these very ne'er-do-well guys hanging around on a street lamp on a street corner in smoky, foggy London. And it was something like, do you know that, are your children keeping bad company? So he's saying that's how he came up with the name. So I think between the two stories, that's how it happened. And here we are 50 years later.
Yep. First group to be signed to Led Zeppelin's label Swan Song, the 1974 LP Bad Company. It's a classic. with Ready for Love and Can't Get Enough. Tell me, is this story true that it Can't Get Enough was recorded? You guys were spaced out all over the house. You're in the basement. Boz was in the laundry room. Paul and Mick are upstairs, and Paul did the vocals on the lawn, which is why we hear you counting down to start the song.
Well, some of that is true.
Okay.
It's Headley Grange, by the way, where Zepp were recording, I believe, Led Zeppelin 4. Headley Grange in Sussex. Paul did the vocals on the lawn for Bad Company. About 3 a.m. with a full moon. That's but the actual, we were spread all over the house, and I had to hit, the side of the snare drum. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go bra, and in we come. And when we heard it back, I said, you know what? Let's keep it. Let's keep that counting, because it's it humanizes the band in a way, but it was such a joy to play. That album was, we knocked it out in, I think, 3 or 4 days, and took 3 days to mix it. So the whole thing took a week and cost, I believe, £18,000, and went on to sell. It's still selling. I mean, it's in the 12, 13, 14 million now. It's one of the best investments we ever made.
I have it on vinyl. It's a classic, classic album. Do you have a favorite Bad Company song that you like to play?
I've always liked doing Shooting Star because of the build. And a lot of our tracks did build. That's just the thing that we were into in those days. They build and build, like Run with the Pack is a huge build. But I think Shooting Star, because of the human element to it, and unfortunately it's still very relevant today. That fame can be this double-edged sword. It can bring you wealth and happiness, and it can also bring you to your knees and give you a premature death. But it's an actual, I love the tempo of it. And when Ringo asked me to play in his band, that was my first choice. He said, well, what about All Right Fucking Now? I said, well, I've never sung it, but, He said, well, you got to do it. You can do that Shooting Star as well if you want. So I ended up singing Shooting Star many, many times, and it became even more ingrained in me as my favorite track.
You joined Wildlife for a while when Bad Company disbanded, then you went back to them.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the band Wildlife.
Wow, no one's really asked me about them. Well, as you know, we were on Swan Song, and Zeppelin and Bad Company had this kind of unwritten agreement that we would listen to cassettes, and this dates it. People would send in cassettes, groups, solo artists would send in cassettes to the Swan Song offices. And we did listen to some, you didn't listen to all of them, but there was this one demo cassette, and I really liked the singer, and the harmonies were good, and everything about them was really, really good. And I got in touch with there were 2 brothers, the Overland brothers, Steve and Chris Overland, guitarist and singer. And I liked them, and we got together and we hit it off, we clicked, and they, we knocked off this album that was really good. It just, I think because I was known as Bad Company's drummer, and people didn't really want to think that Bad Company was over. We did a sort of cursory tour with Michael Schenker, the Michael Schenker group, all over England, and it didn't sell, it didn't take off. And after about a year, we went our separate ways. I rejoined Bad Company. But here's the thing, Tommy, it's funny. I've done 3 albums with this Steve Overland, and it's called, hang on, we kind of hooked up. He was in a band called FM, pretty good. And we've done 3 albums as Lone Rider. It's a little side project, and it's really good. I mean, the guitarist, Steve Morris, is incredible. So it's funny how things can go full circle. But that was Wildlife.
It's funny you bring up Lone Rider, because I had that in my notes. I found that band and I enjoy the sound. I enjoy the music. And listeners, I'll put a link to Lone Rider in the show notes, along with Simon's official website, which is officialsimonkirke.com. I'll put links in there, but I'm a fan of Lone Rider. I got to tell you.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a great band. I just, I mean, we've done 3 albums now, and they're all really, really good songs. I don't know how far I will take it along because my touring days are kind of coming to an end. I'm an old guy, and I love playing, but I don't like traveling. And we'll see what happens. But it's a good band, and the musicianship, I have to say, is really, really good. So Lone Rider, check it out.
From research I did, I found an article, and I agree with you. It is a travesty that Bad Company and Free are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I was shocked because I guess I just thought that they were in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then finding out they're not, it is complete travesty. I cannot agree with you more. Those two bands should definitely be in there.
Well, I get this a lot, and how do I feel about it? I feel slighted. I mean, I do think, especially Free. I mean, God, a lot of bands out there will cite Free as one of their influences. Same with Bad Company. Now, you look at Foreigner, who just been inducted, or they've been nominated. They're going to be inducted soon. There's not one original member. The Foreigner that goes around the country now doesn't have one original member. So, someone pointed out to me quite a few years ago that because Bad Company had a couple of different lineups, maybe that was diluting, the name in a way. And I'll agree to that. Maybe that is a point. But when you take the original Bad Company, which is myself, Paul Rodgers, Mick Ralphs, and Buzz Burrell, they should definitely be inducted. Paul Rodgers should be in on his own merit, because you take any singer now, contemporary singer, and they will say, Paul Rodgers is one of the greatest singers ever. So I don't know why neither bands have been even nominated yet, Tom. It is a mystery, but my hands are tied.
Simon, did you drum with Chuck Berry?
I did.
How was that?
I didn't know that. That's a story. I was in Switzerland with my family, and I know a couple of the how can we say, the entitled aristocrats out there.
Okay.
I rubbed shoulders with them on quite a few occasions, and I got a call out of the blue in my hotel room by one of these guys who was in. We were in, forget the name, Gustad, right? And he said, listen, I'm in wherever the name of the town was. It's only 10, 15 minutes away. He said, look, we've got Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley flying in from America to do a private party. I went, wow, okay. He said, but our drummer's got the flu. And how they found me, I have no idea. But anyway, it was Nathan East, one of the greatest bass players of all time, me, Johnny Johnson on piano, and Chuck Berry. And they said, would you like to play? And I said, I'd love to. I've always wanted to play with him. I've heard he's a little difficult, but I don't give a shit. I've worked with difficult people before. And we did this show, and we did a couple of days rehearsals, and it was a private show with about 50 or 60 guests, and it was great. It was different. I'll tell you that, Tom. It was different. He was hard work.
I'll bet. You toured with the Ringo Starr's all-star band that also had Edgar Winter and Steve Lukather. But it's almost like I was thinking, what was it like for you to come full circle to go and you've seen Ringo Starr play, that influenced you to be a drummer, and then here you are touring with his band? I mean, was it like a full circle moment?
It was, but let me just rewind the tape a little bit. The bands that I was with was Peter Frampton, Jack Bruce, and Gary Brooker, and then band was Todd Rundgren and Eric Carmen. And so Edgar, I wished I could have played with Edgar, although Bad Company did play with him But that's another story. So yeah, I mean, I was a little nervous, but when I first sat down with Ringo in 1996, I'd been playing nearly 30 years, so I knew that I was pretty good at what I could do, and our styles were very, very similar. They were simple and solid, hopefully with the right feel, for the track. The only thing that me and him sorted out was who would do drum fills, and we decided to alternate, so that we wouldn't be a train wreck. But I was happy, very, very happy to play with him because he's a very good drummer. He still is to this day. He's influenced hundreds, thousands of drummers, because he plays the song. He doesn't play the beat. He plays the song. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it definitely makes sense. Definitely makes sense. On your website, there's a song that you recorded, I believe is a solo song called Because of You. And I think it's done with the Empty Pockets.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the song. When did that song get recorded?
Oh, I love the Empty Pocket. I did a solo album, All Because of You, oh God, 5 or 6 years ago now in Chicago. And I remarried to this lovely lady, Maria. And it just came, it was one of those songs. It kind of wrote itself. Yeah, we recorded it. I think we did it in 2 takes. And I mean, I can't praise Empty Pockets high enough. They are a wonderful bunch, and I love them to death. But it was a good album. The whole album, I was so pleased with.
Tell me about the last time that Bad Company played, which is here in Las Vegas where I am at T-Mobile with Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
What was that show like?
Thank God it was a good gig. It was one of the best gigs we ever played. Well, we've toured with Skinner on many occasions. We love them. They're like our brothers, and last time we all saw them was when we went to Gary Rossington's funeral. That was a very, very sad time. The last time we saw them all. Yeah, we didn't know it would probably be Bad Company's last show. That was 5 years ago. And yeah, it was just a very, very good show. And they gave each of us a signed guitar. All the Skinner guys signed a guitar. We all got one because it was the end of the tour. So not only was it the end of the tour, but we didn't know it would be probably the last Bad Company show ever.
Ricky Medlock is a former guest that's been on my show. Great guy, great interview. Had a great time with Ricky.
Yeah, Ricky, I mean, me and Ricky get on. Number one, he's a drummer. He used to be a drummer. And I was having coffee. We had breakfast together a couple of times. And I have honey in my black coffee. And he said, fuck me. I met someone else who does exactly the same thing. I've never met anyone who has honey in black coffee except Ricky Medlock. I said, not only are we brothers in rock and roll, my friend, but we're brothers in coffee as well.
Are you still working on doing some movie scores?
I am. I'm taking a course right now in movie scoring. That's what I really want to do, and write songs. I'll always write songs, but the thing about movie scoring is I don't have to travel, and my traveling days are over. I'm going to be 75 in July, and I got a happy marriage, and I don't want to torpedo it or sabotage it by going on the road. That being said, I do the occasional solo show. I got a couple of solo shows down south in July and October. And then I'm doing a few shows with G. Smith, wonderful guitar player, on the West Coast. But, the shows they're few and far between, and I like it like that.
What's it mean to you that you've played on so many iconic, classic rock songs?
I don't want to sound flippant. I mean, put it like this, Tommy. When people come up to me after shows and say, your songs got me through this, or, remind me of my dad who loved you. And I get choked up because It means that we've connected. And we all know that music is the most international of languages. You can play a song in Iceland and it will resonate with someone in Buenos Aires or Tokyo to bloody Timbuktu. It means something. So it's a unification that's what music does. It unites. But when people point out that Free or Bad Company means so much to them, that's all I need. That's all the praise I need. The fact that I played drums on it, I was just at the right place at the right time.
That flip of the coin. Look what that did for you.
Yeah, the flip of the coin. Because let me go back to that. The flipping of the coin was Black Cat Bones was in this pub, which is about a 40-minute subway ride away. That's a long way. And I'd had a hard day at work in demolishing things. And I was either going to stay home and write a letter to my mum and dad, or I was going to go to this pub. And I flipped a coin and it came down, go to the pub. And here I am talking to you.
Look at the flip of the coin, change your complete life around. Maybe that's what you got to do out there, people. If you're stuck at a crossroads, just flip a coin and go with whatever it says. It worked for Simon. It might work for you. Who knows? So what do you enjoy doing? I mean, now that you're kind of really retired from touring, but doing a little bit of music, what do you do outside of music?
Well, I love playing golf. And I've played golf now for, nearly 45 years. I love it. I'm not very good at it, but I adore it. And as soon as I get off this, I'm going to start watching some of the Masters. I love riding my Harley, but those days are coming to an end because, I got a wife who worries, and we see a lot of accidents out here, especially in New York City. I love movies. I love watching movies. I mean, I know this sounds kind of boring, but I do. I really enjoy, and I love sitting at my keyboard. I don't practice drums as much as I used to, but I love composing and I love writing songs. That's what I'll do until I kick off. I just love playing piano and just being, and I like teaching. I'm doing this teaching job down in University of Georgia in Savannah. They want me to do a clinic and then talk to the students about drumming and the music business and so on. I mean, I could do that till the cows come home, quite honestly, because I got a lot of stories to tell, a lot of experience. So I am for hire, shall we say.
Well, I wish you nothing but low scores, fairways, greens, and hole-in-ones in your golf career.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your time and coming on and talking about your career. It's been nothing but an honor to have you on my show.
Thank you, Tommy.
Listeners, I want you to do me a favor before we go. I did a podcast docuseries in support of Native American rights of the harsh and unfair treatment of the indigenous community. I did it with filmmaker Antonino D'Ambrosio. It's entitled A Heartbeat and a Guitar, Johnny Cash, and the Making of Bitter Tears. I'll put a link in the show notes to the entire docuseries. I strongly suggest that you go listen to it. It'll open your eyes. We need to make a movement to help the Native American community. That's going to do it for this episode of Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale. And until next time, everybody, I salute a chin chin.